Good evening and welcome to the channel. Tonight we are going to talk about something that has happened in this war that cuts through all the headlines about oil prices and Hormuz and NATO coalitions and gets to the raw, deeply personal dimension of what this conflict has become between Iran and Israel. The man who started this war, the man who has wanted to bomb Iran for 40 years, the man who made 6 trips to the White House in 1 year to convince Donald Trump to make his dream come true. Benjamin Netanyahu, 76 years old, Prime Minister of Israel, the architect of Operation Roaring Lion, the leader of the country that fired the first missiles on February 28th. On Sunday, March 15th, in a cafe on the outskirts of Jerusalem, sitting with a cup of coffee, Benjamin Netanyahu looked directly into a camera and made a joke about being dead. And across the border, across the missiles and the drones and the burning oil depots and the 3 weeks of war, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran issued a statement saying, if the child killer Netanyahu is still alive, they will continue to pursue him and kill him with full force. This is the dimension of the war that no oil price chart can capture. This is personal. And tonight we are going to examine exactly what happened, why it happened, what the information war around Netanyahu's death and survival tells us about how this conflict is being fought, and what the IRGC assassination threat against a sitting head of government means for a war that is now in its 17th day. Let us start from the beginning of this particular story, which began not on March 15th, but several days earlier. Since the very first day of Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, social media platforms, particularly in Iran and in pro-Iranian networks worldwide, have been circulating rumors that Benjamin Netanyahu is dead or severely injured. This is not an accident. It is not random internet speculation. It is a deliberate and coordinated information warfare campaign that researchers monitoring the conflict have traced back to outlets linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and coordinated networks of accounts posing as activists from various countries. The IRGC's Tasnim news agency was identified by the Jerusalem Post as the original source pushing the death narrative. Iran's information warfare doctrine, which has been studied and documented by Western intelligence services for years, includes the deliberate spread of false information about enemy leadership in order to create confusion, lower morale, sow doubt about the durability of the opposing government, and generate psychological pressure on the civilian population of the enemy country. The specific rumor that exploded on social media in the days before Netanyahu's coffee video was triggered by his first press conference since the war began. Netanyahu held it on Thursday, March 13th, 2 weeks into the war, via video link. This was the first time most people had seen him since the conflict began, and when the footage was released within minutes, the conspiracy theory engines of the internet went to full throttle. People began freeze-framing the video and claiming that Netanyahu appeared to have 6 fingers on one hand. 6 fingers. The claim was that the video was AI-generated, that the extra finger was a typical artificial intelligence rendering error, and that therefore Netanyahu was dead or missing and the Israeli government was creating deepfake videos to hide his fate. The speculation spread from fringe accounts to mainstream social media within hours. Iran's state-affiliated media amplified it. Iranian influencers shared the videos. The hashtag about Netanyahu's death began trending in multiple languages. And crucially, the IRGC itself issued a statement referencing the, quote, unknown fate of the Zionist criminal prime minister and the possibility of his death or his escape from the occupied territories. Iran's state military was publicly suggesting, through official channels, that the leader of the country it is at war with might be dead. This matters more than it might seem at first glance. In wartime, leadership continuity is everything. When Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed on the very first day of Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, the blow to Iranian morale was immense and immediate. Iranians had spent decades being told that the Islamic Republic was indestructible, that its supreme leader was protected by divine will, that its enemies could not penetrate the heart of the system. And then, in one night, the supreme leader was dead. His compound was rubble, and his family members were killed alongside him. The psychological impact of that was enormous. Iran knew this, and Iran has spent 17 days trying to inflict the equivalent psychological blow on Israel and on Netanyahu personally. If they could convince the Israeli public and the international community that Netanyahu was dead or missing, the impact on Israeli morale, on Israeli public confidence in its government, and on Netanyahu's personal political standing would be significant. It would validate Iran's claims that it was winning the war's psychological dimension. It would make Israel look weak. And it would make Netanyahu, who built his entire political identity around being the indispensable security man, look like a casualty. Netanyahu understood all of this, which is why what he did on Sunday was both clever and calculated. He appeared at a cafe on the outskirts of Jerusalem, not in a bunker, not via video link, not in a studio with carefully controlled lighting. A cafe, the kind of place ordinary people go. He ordered coffee, he picked it up. He looked into the camera held by his aide and said, "In Hebrew, I am dead for coffee." In Hebrew, the word met, which means dead, is also used colloquially to mean crazy about something or to love something intensely. So Netanyahu was playing on the death word deliberately, mockingly, in front of the camera. "I love coffee," he said. "I love my nation." He then raised both hands to the camera with all fingers visible and asked, "Do you want to count my fingers?" A direct, in-your-face response to the six-finger conspiracy theory. He was not just proving he was alive. He was making Iran look ridiculous. He was mocking the IRGC's information warfare operation. He was broadcasting a signal of confidence and contempt to every Iranian platform that had spread the death rumors. And he did it with a cup of coffee in his hand. But even that was not enough to end the conspiracy. The internet being what it is, the coffee video itself immediately became the subject of new rounds of speculation. Some users claimed the coffee video was also AI-generated. The chatbot Grok, run by Elon Musk's company xAI, when asked to analyze the video, responded that it was 100% likely to be a deepfake. Grok's AI assessment went viral. Researchers were quick to point out that Grok is not a reliable video authentication tool and that its analysis was not a credible fact check. Reuters confirmed the video's location by matching the cafe's interior with publicly available photos. The cafe itself posted multiple videos and images of Netanyahu's visit on its own social media accounts on Sunday. Multiple Israeli officials confirmed to news organizations that Netanyahu is fine, and the claims are fake news. There is no credible evidence that the video is AI-generated. But in the information warfare environment of this war, credible evidence is not the point. The point is confusion. The point is doubt. And the IRGC achieved at least some of that, even after Netanyahu appeared in person with a cup of coffee. Now let us talk about the kill threat itself, because it is one of the most serious things to have been said out loud in this entire war. The IRGC's Public Relations Department published an official statement on Sunday, March 15th, through its official SEPA News platform. The statement said, and I am going to quote this precisely because the exact wording matters, "If this criminal, the killer of children, is still alive, we will continue working to hunt him down and kill him with all our strength." The statement was then carried by Iran's state-run Islamic Republic News Agency, IRNA, on its official social media accounts. This is not a fringe group. This is not an anonymous online account. This is the official armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, through their official public relations department, through their official news agency, issuing a formal assassination threat against a sitting head of government of a foreign country. Let us put this in context. The IRGC called Netanyahu a child killer. This is a reference to the more than 100 children who have been killed or injured in Iran and Lebanon since the war began on February 28th. Iran's IRGC has explicitly linked the assassination threat to the Israeli strikes that have killed Iranian children, including the Manab girls' school strike on the first day of the war, where a U.S. Tomahawk missile killed at least 165 students and teachers. A strike that the U.S. military's own preliminary investigation suggests was likely caused by outdated intelligence about a nearby naval base. The IRGC is telling the world that it considers Netanyahu personally responsible for those children's deaths and that it will hunt him with what it calls full force until he is killed. Now, some analysts are saying that this kind of rhetoric from the IRGC is standard wartime escalation messaging rather than a confirmed operational directive indicating an imminent assassination attempt. The Defense Security Asia analysis of the threat noted that similar rhetoric has appeared repeatedly during the current war, and that IRGC statements throughout the conflict have consistently emphasized retaliation narratives following high-impact events. That is a fair point. Iran has been making dramatic statements throughout this war that have not always translated into immediate operational action. The IRGC has on multiple occasions claimed capabilities and announced threats that have not been followed through at the scale claimed. The information domain of this war is saturated with exaggeration from both sides. But here's the thing. There is a very important historical precedent for taking Iranian threats to assassinate Israeli leaders seriously. Iran has an active, documented history of assassination operations and plots against Israeli and Jewish targets worldwide. In the weeks before this war began, in January 2026, U.S. and Israeli intelligence foiled multiple Iranian-backed plots to kill Israeli officials and Jewish community leaders in Europe and North America. In 2023, Iran plotted to assassinate Israeli Ambassador Michael Herzog in Washington. In 2022, Iranian operatives were charged with plotting to kill former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. In 2021, an Iranian-backed plot to kill Israeli businessmen in Cyprus was disrupted. The pattern of Iranian assassination plotting is not hypothetical. It is a documented operational program. And in the context of a live war in which Iran's supreme leader has been killed, in which Iran has lost its defense minister, its IRGC commander, and thousands of senior military personnel, the IRGC's stated desire to kill Netanyahu is not merely rhetoric. It is a strategic objective that Iran has the motivation, the history, and potentially the operational capacity to pursue. And Israel knows this, which is why Netanyahu's security arrangements during this war are unlike anything that has been in place during his entire 20-plus years in senior Israeli leadership. He held his first press conference since the war began via video link, not in person, 17 days into the conflict. He has been operating from secure, undisclosed locations. His public appearances have been tightly controlled and security choreographed. The cafe visit was, in its own way, a carefully managed security operation dressed up to look casual. The timing, the location, the duration, the security presence that must have been invisible to the camera, but was certainly there, all of it was controlled. Netanyahu appeared in that cafe for exactly long enough to make a joke and show his fingers, and then he was gone. A man who was once famous for his long, combative press conferences, who would hold court with journalists for hours, who reveled in the political theater of public appearances, is now making carefully staged 30-second coffee videos from a Jerusalem suburb to prove he is alive. Israel responded to Iran's kill threat the way it has responded to everything in this war, with force. The IDF announced on Sunday that it had eliminated 2 senior Iranian intelligence officials from the Khatam al-Anbiya Emergency Command. The 2 men were identified as Abdollah Jalai Nasab and Amir Shariat. They had recently been appointed to their positions after their predecessor, Saleh Assadi, was killed in an earlier Israeli operation. The pattern is clear and deliberate. Every time Iran kills or threatens to kill senior Israeli figures, Israel goes after senior Iranian command figures. Iran has now lost its supreme leader, its IRGC commander, its defense minister, its armed forces chief of staff, and dozens of senior intelligence and military commanders in 17 days. The leadership pyramid of the Islamic Republic has been systematically dismantled by Israeli precision strikes guided by what appears to be extraordinary intelligence penetration. 20 people were arrested inside Iran this week on charges of spying for Israel, accused of sending location data on Iranian military and security assets to Israeli intelligence. The intelligence war running beneath the kinetic war is as fierce as anything happening in the sky. Netanyahu's own position as a target is not new. Earlier in the war, Iran fired a missile at the area of Caesarea near the Netanyahu family home. The IRGC has claimed strikes on locations in Tel Aviv associated with Netanyahu's office. Iran fired at least 1 K-bar ballistic missile toward locations it claimed were associated with Netanyahu's command infrastructure. None of these strikes appear to have come close to killing him, but the intention has been stated repeatedly and now explicitly. Iran wants Netanyahu dead, and Netanyahu, for his part, has made himself the public face of this war in a way that is almost uniquely personal. He said on Thursday that these were historic days that would be recorded in the annals of Israel. He said Israel was crushing the terrorist regime in Iran. He said Operation Roaring Lion's Roar was growing stronger. He said he was striking Iran and Lebanon very hard and would continue doing so. He has made himself the symbol of this campaign, the man whose 40-year dream of bombing Iran is being realized in real time. And in doing so, he has made himself Iran's most personal enemy in this war. There is a dimension of this story that deserves to be stated clearly. The information warfare campaign around Netanyahu's death is not just about Netanyahu. It is part of a broader Iranian strategy to delegitimize the Israeli government in the eyes of its own people and the watching world. If Netanyahu can be portrayed as dead, missing, injured, or hiding in fear, the image of invincible Israeli military power that his government has cultivated for decades begins to crack. If the coffee video can be called AI, if the 6 fingers become a viral global conversation, if millions of people around the world are left genuinely uncertain whether the Prime Minister of Israel is alive, then Iran has scored a significant propaganda victory at 0 military cost. A single coordinated social media operation, amplified by state-affiliated media for free, caused Benjamin Netanyahu to leave his secure location, travel to a cafe, pick up a cup of coffee, and make a joke on camera. Iran made the leader of one of the world's most powerful military machines come to them on social media to prove he existed. The cafe video has been seen hundreds of millions of times across all platforms since Sunday. It is one of the most widely circulated pieces of content from this entire war. Netanyahu's joke about being dead for coffee has been translated into dozens of languages. The IRGC threat to hunt and kill him has been broadcast on every major news outlet on the planet. A war about nuclear programs, missile capabilities, and oil choke points has for 48 hours been dominated by a cup of coffee and a conspiracy theory about someone's fingers. This is information warfare working exactly as designed. Not to change the military balance, not to stop a single bomb, but to dominate the attention of the world, to make the enemy respond on your terms, and to insert doubt and fear into the conversation at no military cost whatsoever. And through all of this, the bombs have not stopped. The missiles have not stopped. The drones have not stopped. Israel has hit more than 200 targets in Iran in the past 24 hours alone. Iran has launched its 52nd wave of attacks against U.S. bases in the region. Lebanon's death toll has passed 850. Hezbollah has fired more than 1,000 rockets and drones into Israel over the past 2 weeks. Israeli ground troops are now operating in southern Lebanon in what the IDF calls a limited and targeted operation that Defense Minister Israel Katz says will continue until Hezbollah no longer poses a threat. Language that sounds remarkably like the language used at the start of the Gaza operation 2 years ago. Dubai's airport was hit by a drone on Monday morning and briefly closed. Oil is above $105 per barrel, 17 days in, and there is no ceasefire. There are no negotiations. There is no exit plan visible to anyone looking at this war from the outside. There is only the next wave of missiles, the next set of targets, the next press conference via video link, and the next cup of coffee at a carefully secured Jerusalem cafe. Before I hand it over to you, 3 questions for tonight. Question A. Iran's IRGC officially announced through its state news agency that it will hunt down and kill Netanyahu with full force if he is still alive. Netanyahu responded with a joke about coffee. But the history of Iranian assassination operations against Israeli and Jewish targets around the world is documented and real. Do you think Iran will actually attempt a direct assassination operation against Netanyahu during this war, or is the threat purely psychological and rhetorical? Question B. The information warfare campaign around Netanyahu's death rumors was traced back to outlets linked to the IRGC and was amplified so effectively that it forced Netanyahu himself to appear on camera to prove he was alive. And then even that video was called AI by millions of people. Do you think information warfare and social media disinformation will be looked back on as one of the decisive weapons of this conflict, maybe even more impactful than the missiles themselves in shaping how the world perceives this war? And question C. Netanyahu said these are historic days that will be recorded in the annals of Israel. He's been working toward this Iran confrontation for 40 years. He is 76 years old, under assassination threat, operating from secure locations, running a war on 2 fronts, and making coffee jokes on camera. When historians write about this moment, do you think Netanyahu will be remembered as the man who finally destroyed Iran's nuclear threat, or as the man who dragged Israel and America into a conflict with consequences that will unfold for generations? Drop your answers below. Share this video because the story of this war is being fought as much on your screen as it is in the skies above Tehran. Subscribe if you have not already. Stay safe out there, and I will see you on the next one.